Good morning. If you're new to this channel, hi, it's really nice to meet you. My name's Milena. But if you're a returning subscriber, well, welcome. Welcome back. If you haven't watched my previous video on housing, I do recommend you to go watch that one first because this video is kind of an extension of that one. So in my previous video, I talked about housing tips in the Netherlands, specifically in Rotterdam, but honestly, most of the tips are applicable to different cities. But in this video, we'll be talking about the things that you should watch out when you're about to rent a room. So more specific things that you can ask or check out to make sure that the first apartment that you're living in is not going to turn into your own personal hell. And so the things that we will be talking about today are based on my own experience, my boyfriend's experience, and my friend's experience. And hopefully by letting you know about these things, you'll be able to catch red flags right off the bat. So the first thing that you should look out for when you're going to rent a room is who your landlord is. And a lot of people think that they don't need to get to know their landlord before, renting the room because they think, oh, the landlord is just the person that I pay every month and so. However, if there's ever anything big that breaks in the house, let's say for example the heating doesn't work or there's something wrong with the water system or anything of the sort, then it's usually the landlord that takes care of certain things. Obviously not everything, but like big things. That's usually the landlord's responsibility. In the case that you have a landlord that is not responsive to literal cries of help, then you know that in the long run this is not going to be something that's sustainable. For example, my boyfriend is currently in a student house where I can say with certainty it is falling apart. Literally every piece of wood on the wall or in the cupboards, everything there is so old that it has become kind of just sawdust. And when you go up to the landlord and you say, hey, there are certain things in the house that are falling apart, and her response is, I'll get to it sometime. Sometime is a long time, seeing that he has been waiting for like half a year for something to be done. Another thing that I recommend you to also do before you go on to renting a room is to see if you can contact the previous tenant. Figure out why they moved out. If they moved out because the landlord was literally so terrible they'd rather live on the street than stay in the house, then that's a pretty good indication that you're probably not gonna want to live there. If they moved away for some reasons like they got married or something, then of course you know that the household is somewhere where people can live, where people won't try to escape. And so that's another thing that I recommend you to do before you go on to rent out the room. Next, you should check what type of floors they have in the building. And with floors, I mean the type of material they use. For example, is it wood or plastic or some other material? With that, you can figure out if the house is going to be cold or not. In the Netherlands, when you see houses that have tiled floors, they're usually very cold, especially in the winter times. They lose a lot of heat and you can't expect to be particularly nice and cozy on those very, very cold tiles. You should also ask about the kitchen space. How big is the refrigerator? How big is the freezer? How big is the sink? I know that a lot of people face issues when they move into a new home and they realize that they don't have as much space as they'd want. Especially with the refrigerator and the freezer, in the case that you're living with a lot of people who usually buy a lot of stuff, you may be faced with very limited space. And also, if your roommates are the type of people who like to have a lot of things and don't really leave a lot of space for you, then you know that's something that you may not enjoy in the long run. Okay, so the next point, the thickness of the walls. And that might be extremely specific, but yes, the thickness of the walls is something that you should consider. Especially if you go into, for example, an apartment that recently made an extra room by building up a wall. Those walls usually aren't very thick, and they don't isolate sound nor heat, and you and the person right next to your room might be faced with a situation where there is something equivalent to a piece of cloth between you and their room. Again, using my boyfriend's house as an example, he is renting out a room which was previously just like an extension of the living room, and the woman built an extra wall. But it's first of all hollow, second of all it's made out of two different types of material because they were making it out of wood. They ran out of wood and then they put just like glass, so there's just one part that's just see-through into his room, and their solution was to just hang up a curtain. I think they just like taped a curtain up, and the height of the material wasn't tall enough, and so there's a good foot in between where the wall ends and where like the floor is, it's not great. So make sure to check those things out before you rent out a room, because you may be thinking at this point, your boyfriend really just did not check this apartment. But the thing is, he saw a bunch of pictures and he based his decision off of what he saw and didn't ask these very specific questions, which would have inevitably made him decide not to rent out the room. But hey, what to do? At least I can warn you so that you don't have to get worried about the curtain that blocks off the living room to your boyfriend's bedroom. Moving on, you should check the maintenance of the walls. It's not uncommon that landlords usually just kind of slap some white paint on walls just to make things look nice and clean. However, if the people who painted the walls did a bad job or used the wrong kind of paint, in the long run the paint might drip, or it may stain things, or in general it will just not look very nice. You should also check if the corners of the rooms, or specifically the bathroom, like the shower area, if there are no signs of mold. In the case that you have a shower that doesn't have a window or at least a good ventilation system, then you will usually find mold there in the corners or down near the floor, and it is not pleasant. And what some landlords like to do, very, very sneakily, is they slap some paint on that. So make sure to please check if the layer of paint isn't covering something. Okay, so that also reminds me, before I got to this apartment, the previous owner used to smoke a lot. So all the walls were extremely yellow, and when we asked her to paint it over, she said yeah, sure. And we later found out that they literally just painted over all the smoke and they didn't clean it before they painted over it. And so the house still smelled like an ashtray. It didn't look like it, right? Because it had that like thin layer of white paint. But that also meant that the smell was kind of forever stuck there until we decided to clean everything out and repaint everything. But basically that's something you should watch out for, the maintenance of the walls, and specifically if the paint isn't trying to cover something. Also, if you are looking to rent a room, usually landlords will ask you one specific question. Are you subscribed to Milena Michiko? To which your answer should be yes. So do subscribe to the channel for more content like this, because I'm genuinely just trying to help you save money and not get scammed. You should also check functional things, for example, handles or windows, blinds and things, just to make sure that everything works. You also don't want to get blamed for something not working in the middle of your contract. For example, if your door handle stops working after the third day you moved in, then they might think that it was something that you did. So make sure to check everything functional before you go on to sign the contract, just so that you know what the conditions of the room are before you move in. And that kind of moves to the next thing that I wanted to talk about, which is the furniture. You should also check the state of the furniture, specifically how the previous tenant took care of it. Because if, for example, you do rent out a room which is fully equipped with a bed and a chair, but you figure out that the bed is missing a foot and the chair doesn't have a back and it also has a bunch of termites on it, then you might think, hey, I maybe don't want that furniture. That furniture is maybe something I don't want included in the price. So what you can do in most cases, you can decide if you want to keep the furniture or if you'd rather buy or bring your own. In the case that you do just kind of buy whatever is there because you assume that it is good quality, there's a pretty high chance that you might get stuck with things that aren't as nice as they look in the picture, because trust me, most things don't look as nice as they do in the picture. And before you go around town crazily signing all contracts possible because you're so desperate to find a room, do check what the price of the room or the apartment entails. And with that I mean figure out what the price includes with regards to utilities. So Wi-Fi costs or any other kind of maintenance things that are usually done for the household. I have a lot of friends who went on to sign a contract because they needed a place to live, and then later they found out that the price didn't include all the things that they thought was included, and then they ended up paying way above their budget and they couldn't afford to live that way for too long of a period. Alright, so that was it for today. Thank you for joining me once again for a video. Do comment below if you did have a favorite tip or something that you hadn't thought about before. Also, a genuine shout out to everyone who has been extremely kind and lovely and supportive to the channel and to me, and who have reached out. I really appreciate it. And if you are someone who I have recently talked to or met, thank you so much. Thank you for tuning in once in a while. And honestly, I just want to pass down everything that I know to make your life easier, to save you some money, to decrease the potential stress, to avoid getting scammed, and all the good things in the world. But hey, either way, I'll see you next time. But till then, take care, stay safe, and for the love of God, wash your hands. Bye!